Hello everyone. Many of you did actually do very well with this discussion, Taken in London, the sequel. I am recording a little video for you just to have a reference and for those of you who did not receive the right answers. The assumptions for this discussion case study are actually the same than the case study online. Taken in London. The only difference that you're going to see here is that the budget was increased to $15 million and the senior lender, our bank, applied a category E discount for $50,000. So what does that mean? Well, increasing the budget to $50 million is basically telling you that the budget for Taken in London that was originally for the first movie $10 million is now going to be for the sequel $50 million. And when we take our pre-sales, which are the distribution deals completed and arranged by the sales agent before our film is produced, these agreements are distribution contracts we can take to our bank and receive a pre-sale loan, cash flowing those contracts. So you have a distribution agreement signed by a distributor. You take this distribution agreement to your bank and they will look at the agreement and give you a loan. But the bank will decide what kind of loan they will give you for each of these agreements. And it very much depends on who the distributor is and how bankable the distributor is. And subject to that bankability of your buyer, of your distributor, the bank will apply a discounting rate. So if the discounting rate is lower, that means that the distributor, in the eyes of the bank, is not as reliable and may have a spotty payment track record with the bank. And the way we find this out as producer is when we see on the term sheet that the bank will give us a high discount. Like in this case, the bank decided we're only going to cash flow 50% of these pre-sales that were concluded by the sales agent for the various distribution agreements, which signals to us that the various distributors that have bought our licensing and have concluded the pre-sales with the sales agents have a, I would say, questionable bankability rate with the bank. So the 50% discount that is applied here tells us not all of them are seen or have been seen in the past to pay on time, or they're potentially in economically challenged countries. So all in all, what we're experiencing here in the discussion for Taken in London, the sequel, is that the discounting was applied for the category E and basically discounts all our pre-sales by 50%. So our loan for these pre-sales is going to be 50% of the value of all the pre-sales. All the other assumptions that you see here are the same for Taken in London, our sequel, than they were for Taken in London, the movie that we have in our modules in case study 5. So you see here continued assumptions, which are for brand integration, production incentives, the music investment, the equity investment, and all expense considerations that are listed here. They are the exact same assumptions as you have seen in the case study Taken in London. There's no difference. But of course, you have to calculate them now that you have the new budget. So these numbers will be different in your finance plan. Let's take a look at what our finance plan looks like for this. And as we always do with any film that is being financed, we first establish a valuation. What is the value of our film? In this case, what is the value of Taken in London, the sequel, now that its budget is no longer 10 million but 15 million? How does that change our international sales estimates? What are the differences that we're going to be noticing here? So the international sales estimates reflect 75% of the $15 million budget, and they're now $11,250,000. The pre-sales were established at 35% of the budget, which is $5,250,000. These pre-sales again are nothing else than distribution agreements that are entered into with distributors who buy the license to show our film in their country, in their territory. So these are regular distribution agreements. The only difference between them is, and regular distribution agreements that we're selling, is that these agreements are done before the film is produced versus a regular sale, which is also a distribution agreement, that is done after the film is finished, which is what happens with our unsold rights, which we show here at $6 million. So when we have international sales estimates of 11,250,000 and we take away the pre-sales that we have concluded in order to arrive how many rights do we have left to sell, we're taking 11,250,000. We are deducting the pre-sales of 5,250,000 and we are left with $6 million in rights that we can still sell. So it's basically all rights in the bucket are your international sales estimates of 75%. We're taking out of that bucket now our pre-sales, which are concluded at 5,250,000, because now we have actually rights sold, so we take them away from the total bucket of rights. So now we have a bucket that is left with $6 million after we took out the distribution rights that we pre-sold out of that bucket. So in our bucket of rights, we have left 6 million in unsold rights, in unsold distribution rights that we can still sell when the movie is finished. The distribution rights for the US are estimated to come in at 35% of the budget, which happens after the movie is finished. And that is 5,250,000 because our budget is 15 million. So altogether, our worldwide distribution rights at the gross level, because no sales fees and no distribution expenses have been deducted here, are $16,500,000 on a $15 million movie. In our first step, we are looking at our senior loan. This is the first item we are preparing to put together our finance plan. So here we have our pre-sales that we have made with all the distributors that have pre-bought our movie based on the script, based on the cast, based on the director, and based on the budget, and based on what they believe the commercial value of the film is. So they have pre-bought the rights to license the film in their respective territories, and altogether the pre-sales that we have received are valued at, or altogether they are summarized at $5,250,000. So we're taking these contracts to the bank, and the bank looks at each and every contract and says, well, thank you for showing us these contracts, they're great, but there are some distributors that are new, there are other distributors that don't have a great track record with us on other movies where they also bought rights and where they might be, a little late with paying. And there are some of the distribution agreements that you have here that come from economically challenged countries. So we, the bank, don't really know if they're going to pay or not. So we will play it safe. We will apply a discount category E, and we will only give you half of the value of all the contracts that you have established. We only give you half as a loan. So of the $5,250,000, which is all the money that we receive for the pre-sales, we will only get a loan for $2,625,000, which is 50% of that. But remember, when we do these deals with the distributors, the payment in the contract is agreed to be received in 2 installments. So the first installment that we are receiving from the distributor happens right then and then at the film market when this pre-sale is made between the sales agent and the distributor, and that is 20% of the amount that's given to us. And then 80% is delivered when the film is delivered. So when these distribution deals happen, you will often find that there is an installment of at least 2 sections where there is a prepayment that is made at between 10 and 20% of the pre-sale amount of the license fee, and then the rest is paid when the movie is delivered. So in this case, obviously the bank knows this. They know and can see from the contracts that we have given the bank that we received a 20% down payment from all the various distributors. So the bank deducts this down payment because we already received it, so the bank does not have to give us a loan for it. So in this case, 20% of $5,250,000 is $1,050,000. So altogether, what we end up receiving as our pre-sale loan gross amount is $1,575,000 because we're deducting $1,050,000 from the $2,625,000 that the bank offers to lenders. So the gross loan amount of $1,575,000 is subject to interest charges that the bank will apply. So they will calculate them at 9%, and that will be 9% of $1,575,000, which is $141,750. And the bank will deduct, so to speak, this interest from the pre-sale amount they give us, which is why the pre-sale loan net of these interest charges is $1,433,250, and that is the amount we will actually receive from the bank. And when we are paying our loan back, we will be paying $1,775,000 because at that time we have to pay the interest charges to the bank. We haven't paid those yet. We haven't given the bank any money. We haven't given them a check for interest charges. So at the time we are finishing the movie, we have finished it, we delivered it to the distributors. So the distributors are now paying the other 80% that they still owe us, and that will cover the gross loan amount of $1,575,000, including the interest. So now we're going to look at the unsold rights. So in this case, the unsold rights was $6 million because remember we had an estimate of 11 million and some change. We have the pre-sales of 5 million and some change, so we have about $6 million left in rights that we can still sell. And here the bank says, this has value to me, and I value this at 50% of whatever the unsold rights amount is, which in our case is 50% of $6 million, and that is $3 million. So we want to make sure we check, does the $3 million loan amount not exceed the cap that the banks will apply at 20% of $50 million. So we want to make sure that the unsold rights loan amount that is suggested to be lent by the bank that we're calculating is not more than 20% of the budget, because the bank will never give us more than 20% of the budget as a gap loan, no matter how many unsold rights we have. So in this case, it's actually the same, because 20% of the budget is also $3 million. And the bank will apply a higher interest charge here of 12%. And it's higher because it's not a contract that they're lending against. There is no real security here. Obviously, the film is the security, but there is no contract. It's just the bank hoping that we will actually sell these unsold rights. So that's why the interest is a little higher at $360,000. They then also charge us a loan fee and a legal fee of $75,000. So we're deducting these fees, and we end up with a net gap loan of $2,565,000. And so altogether, when we're adding the gap loan of $2,565,000 to the pre-sale loan of $1,433,250, the bank will actually give us a loan of $3,998,250,000. So that is our loan amount that we will be receiving. We have to pay back, of course, the gross loan amount, which includes all the fees, the legal fees, the loan fees, and the interest charges, and that amount is $4,575,000, and that is the amount we're paying back later when we deliver the movie to the distributors, and we're paying off our loan when the movie is finished. So the junior loan is still 10% of the budget, but in this case, it is actually 10% of $15 million, not 10% of $10 million, which is why the loan amount is increased now to $1,500,000. And there is a legal fee and an executive producer fee, and we're deducting all these fees. So the net junior loan that we will be receiving to cover the production cost is $1,350,000. And when we look at our incentive loan, we also have to think about that now the budget is 15 million instead of 10 million before. So 25% of 15 million is 3,750,000. The lender charges of 15% are charged on this higher amount. So it's 15% of 3,750,000. That is 562,500, and then there is a legal fee and an executive producer fee that we're being charged. So our net incentive loan that we are receiving is 3,112,500. And remember, this is a loan that is provided to us because we're shooting in a region that offers us a tax credit or a tax rebate based on the money that we're spending in that region. And because we don't want to shoot the movie first, show all the expenses that we had, and then get our money when the movie's finished, we want to have the loan based on what we believe the eligible expenses are and based on what we believe the incentive is going to pay us. We want to have a loan against this up front. And the way we do it is we show what we're believing to spend and what we're believing to receive. And that is what the lender will look at, this kind of assumption early on that is given to us by a line producer and someone checking it in the local incentive region to make sure it's correct and applies with their rules and regulation. So after everyone's happy with this estimate that we believe the incentive to be later, that is why the lender will give us a loan based on the estimate, because it will be checked by everyone and the lender can be sure that the estimate will be the same or at least a minimum of what is going to happen when we actually shoot the movie in the production incentivized region. The brand integration and the music investment are, the brand integration first of all is 10% of the budget, so that is now $1,500,000 instead of $1 million before. And the agency fee is also charged on that amount. 15% of 1,500,000 is 225,000. So net, we have available $1,275,000 for our finance plan. And there is no mentioning made that we will only get 50% this time from the brand and then the other 50% when the movie is finished. In this case study, the brands agree to pay us everything before the film is done. So we get the full $1,275,000 allocated to us and can use that to cover the production costs. And then the music investment is still $120,000. So in order to figure out how much equity we need, we have to calculate all the monies that we have received so far, which is $10,905,750,000. So what is actually then needed to reach the $15 million budget? In this case, it is 27.3% of the budget, which is $4,094,250,000 in equity. So let's take a look at our finance plan again. We have pre-sales that we have done in form of distribution agreements to buyers that are bought based on our script and our cast and our director and our budget. These distribution agreements are done before the movie is produced, which is why they're called pre-sales and not sales. And that is $5,250,000. The bank looks at these pre-sale agreements and decides we value these distributors a certain way, which in this case results in a category E valuation that the bank will give us and leads to a 50% discounted rate. The bank gives us a loan of $2,625,000, but of that, the bank notices in the contracts that we already received 20% of the pre-sales, which is $1,050,000, and that amount we can actually use for our finance plan, of course. So our pre-sale loan, if we deduct the pre-sale, if we deduct the down payment from the discounted pre-sale loan, would then be $1,575,000. We have to pay interest on that, and we're left with $1,433,250,000 as the pre-sale loan amount that is net available to us. And then we look at the gap loan, which is driven by the rights that we can still sell after we looked at our entire sales estimates and have taken out the pre-sales. In this case, there are $6 million worth of rights that we can still sell. The bank will take this under consideration, but only give us 50% of that as a gap loan, and 12% interest are charged, as well as a loan and legal fee, which leaves us with $2,565,000 as a net gap loan. The gross gap loan is $3 million, and the net gap loan after interest charges and legal fees and loan fees is $2,565,000. So the loan amount we have to pay back is $4,575,000, which includes all the fees that the bank is charging in interest charges, loan fees, and legal fees. And the amount that we have available to us to cover the portion of the budget is $3,998,250. So at this very moment, we have the bank loan of $3,998,250 available to us, and the down payment that the distributors have already paid of $1,050,000. So that's the two items we have right now. And then next in line is the 10% junior loan. 10% of $15 million is $1,500,000. A legal fee and an executive producer fee is being charged up front, so we're left with $1,350,000 in this case. The production incentive is calculated on $15 million, which then gets us $3,750,000. The lender who will advance this incentive to us as a loan charges us 15% of this. 15% of $3,750,000 is $562,500, I'm sorry, plus a legal fee and an executive producer fee. So we're left with a production incentive loan of $3,112,500. So this incentive is a loan against what the incentive region will be paying us, or paying to the production after the film has concluded their production in that region. They will, however, not pay us, the producer. They will in that case pay the lender directly. So the lender gets paid by the production incentive region and not by us, which makes this to us non-recoupable, meaning we don't have to pay them, right? Next is brand integration, which is basically a sponsorship that is given to us based on brands we are including in the film in one way or the other. We're talking to the brands about organic integration of the various products, and all the brands together come to a 10% sponsorship payment that we will be receiving, and the agency who made all these brand deals possible charges a 15% rate on that. So $225,000 are deducted from the $1,500,000 sponsorship amount, which leaves us with $1,275,000. The music investment is done based on the music investor looking at our film and looking at the sales estimates and seeing the film is supposed to be sold all over the world, which guarantees them income from music royalties that are being generated through the distribution of the film worldwide. And that has a value to them, which is why they give us $120,000 investment based on the music royalties that will then be assigned to them and will be received by them. So we don't get any music royalty revenues. The music investor will get the music royalty revenues instead. So altogether, when we look at the music investment, the brand integration, the production incentive loan, the junior loan, the bank loan, and the down payment that we have received from the distributors for the pre-sales, we end up having $10,905,750,000 right now. And in order to hit a $15 million budget, we have to ask the equity investor to give us 27.3%, which is $4,094,250,000. So now we have our finance plan completed, and the funding schedule is here with all the various elements that are part of our finance plan to cover a $15 million budget. As the film is then produced and finished, we get to receive revenues, and we are in this case receiving what we projected. So we are receiving $11,250,000 from the international marketplace in distribution rights revenues. We're receiving $5,250,000 from the US distribution rights, and altogether that's $16,500,000. But of that, we already received $1,050,000 from the distributors as a down payment for the international rights. So we now have to deduct this here because we already received the money and we used the money. So we're deducting the down payment that we received from the distributors. So we're left with $15,450,000 that are coming in as revenues. After we receive the revenues, we have to look at the various expenses and payments we have to make. And the first in line is always the collection agent. That is the neutral escrow agent, if you will, who collects all the money that is coming in from the various distributors. It's paid all into one account, a neutral escrow account, and that entity will charge a fee to handle this account. And that fee is 1% of all the monies that come into the account. In this case, it's 1%, $154,500. The next component here is the sales agent. The sales agent will charge us 15% of all the sales he has generated. In our example, this sales agent sold all the international rights and also sold the US rights. So 15% of all the sales that were made is $2,475,000. Next is the expenses that the sales agent will charge for all the various things they do. They go to the markets, the Cannes Film Festival, the American Film Market. They have to pay for a booth. They have to have meetings with buyers, and all these costs that are related to selling our movie in the marketplace are 1% of whatever the sales are, and that is $165,000. And when we look at the sales amount again that we have generated, this is basically 1% of $16,500,000, and the 15% sales fee is 15% of $16,500,000, because those are all the sales altogether. And we're charging this on all the sales, including the down payment, because when we received the down payment, the sales agent did not charge any sales fees. So we got the benefit of getting the full down payment to us. In some cases, you will find that the sales agent will actually charge you their sales fee on the down payment that you're receiving, and then you would have to deduct that sales fee from the down payment, and then the net amount would be the amount available to you to be used to cover your budget. But in this case, we were able to keep the down payment, the full $10,050,000, without having the sales agent deduct anything, which is why the sales agent will charge us here their 15% sales fee and the 1% distribution expenses on the entire sales that they have generated internationally and the US of $16,500,000. So next we have to pay the loan back. As you remember, the gross loan amount was $4,575,000, and that includes all the interest fees and loan charges and legal fees. We have to pay back the loan gross amount, which was $1,500,000, and in this case, the lender also charges us a 10% premium, which is 10% of $1,500,000, and that's $150,000. You remember the equity was $4,095,250, and the equity charges a premium of 20% on that. 20% of $4,094,250 is $818,850. So when we're looking at all the repayments and all the expenses that are being charged to us, altogether, it's $13,932,600. Now, if we're deducting these expenses from the worldwide distribution revenues that we have accomplished of $15,450,000 after the down payment that we deducted, we are left with $1,517,400 in net revenues. So now it's time to allocate the profit participation payments, and profit participation is paid from the net revenues that we received. Net revenues are calculated by taking all the expenses and repayments we have to do and deducting them from the distribution revenues that we achieve. And so the net revenues of $1,017,500 are now subject to profit payments, and these profit payments are allocated 30% to cast and director. 30% of $1,017,400 is $455,220, and the equity investor gets 50% of the equity that he has financed with us. And as you remember, the equity amount altogether that we have received from this equity investor in relation to the budget is 27.3%. That is why 13.65 is going to be the profit participation for the equity investor. 13.65 is 50% of 27.30. So that is why 13.65% of 1,517,500 comes to 207,087. So altogether, we're paying 662,307 in profit participations, which leaves us with 855,093 as the producer profit. So this concludes the answer for your discussion in relation to the case study 5. If you have any questions about this, please email me through the Canvas inbox, and I'm happy to answer the questions for you. Or you can also always email me to set up a one-on-one session that we then can do together. So you can sign up for a slot on your Canvas calendar. And if you don't find a slot, or if it's not showing up on your calendar for some reason, you can just email me and we will set a time that is mutually convenient.